Hi, my name is Will, and today I want to look at a topic from part 2 and 3 of the speaking test that my student recently gave me. Let's look at it to see what kind of vocabulary we could use in order to impress the examiner. Here is the part 2 topic. Part 2. I want you to describe an important plant in your country. You should say what it is, where you see it, what it looks like, and explain why it is important. Okay, you have 1 minute to think about it. Okay, so here is an example of a strong answer. Pay attention firstly to structure and also pay attention to the vocabulary the candidate uses.
What I think of right away is a plant which comes from my country, Japan, and it is called the cherry tree. Cherry trees are famous due to the fact that many gorgeous pink and white flowers grow upon them, and they're called cherry blossoms. So these flowers often bloom in clusters, so all the petals would gather and tend to cover the entire tree. It is an amazing feeling when you walk down a road or through in the peace and quiet of a park, surrounded by these beautiful cherry trees in the spring. What a spectacular sight! The cherry tree originates from Japan, where it is a national icon. Although it is something pretty to look at for many people, the cherry tree is also a significant symbol in Japanese culture. So it represents our cultural values of appreciating the beauty, of course, harmony, and the cyclical nature of life. It seems to me that this has the most profound meaning. The flowers arrive in the spring, although they do not stay long. They will often come back again next spring. So it is like the most treasured moments are fleeting, but more will come again soon. You can see them quite often in Japanese literature and art as well. For example, in paintings and in woodblock prints, even in animes and in movies. The cherry tree is most visible in Tokyo, Kyoto, and Nara, where the cherry blossoms are extremely famous. The tree is also a symbol of peace. So, for instance, after the World War II, Japan actually gave a lot of the sakura trees to the USA. So it is used to bring the two nations together. So in Japan, the cherry tree is not just a plant, but it embodies the country's connection to nature and spirituality, and often reminds people of the fragile and beautiful nature of
So
life.
did you notice how her answer was structured? She used the 1, 2, 3 method in the sense that first she said something, she made a statement, then she explained why, and after that she gave examples. Okay, listen again. What I think of right away is a plant which comes from my country, Japan, and it's called the cherry tree. The cherry trees are famous due to the fact that many gorgeous pink and white flowers grow upon them called cherry blossoms. These flowers often bloom in clusters, so all the petals gather and tend to cover the entire tree. It's an amazing feeling when you walk down a road or through the peace and quiet of a park surrounded by these beautiful trees in spring. So in the second part of her answer, the candidate actually said the words, for instance and for example, like she would in writing. Okay, but the difference here is that, of course, when you're speaking, you're not as precise as writing. So writing, you're precise, but in speaking, you tend to add give it little bits of extra information, etc. But she says, for instance, and for example, in order to make it clear, she's sticking to a structure and she is giving examples. She's trying to illustrate what she's saying. So structure is the first thing that we learned about our speaking answers, particularly in parts 2 and 3. What about vocabulary? What did we learn from her vocabulary in her answer? Okay, the candidate used several types of vocabulary when she gave her answer, and it made it a good answer for vocabulary. She would get a good mark for vocabulary. I just want to concentrate on 3 kinds of vocabulary today that she used in her part 2 speaking answer to make it better. The first type of vocabulary that she used was sentence frame. What are these? Well, these are little phrases that you put at the beginning of a sentence. So most students are going to say however or therefore at the beginning of their sentences when they speak. But most people who speak naturally, native speakers, do not do this. They use little phrases at the beginning of their sentence. So let's take a look at some of the phrases that she used when she was speaking. So one of the phrases was, "What I think of right away is," beginning a sentence like this is much more natural sounding than saying something like, "I think, first of all, I think," or "first of all, I want to talk about." Many training schools tell you to say, "First of all, I think this, secondly, I think that." But this expression, "what I think of right away is much more natural sounding. Here's an example. What is most important to you in life? What I think of right away is my family. What I think of right away. They don't say, she doesn't say, you don't say, well, firstly, my family. No. What I think of right away is my family. Another sentence frame that the student or the candidate uses is, "It seems to me that," again, beginning a sentence like this, "it seems to me that," is much more natural than saying, "I think," or "I believe." "It seems to me that" is much more natural sounding beginning to a sentence when you're speaking. So in this example, the candidate says the following: "It seems to me that this has the most profound meaning." And this is much better than saying, "I think that this has the most profound meaning." It sounds much more natural. And you do not want to repeat, "I think, I think, I think," all the time as you speak, because then it's repetitive vocabulary. So the second kind of vocabulary that could be used to raise your score from a 5 to a 7 in the speaking test, particularly in parts 2 and 3, are what's called collocations. Collocations. Now, what are collocations? Well, very simply put, collocations are words that go naturally together. There is no real reason why they go together, they just go naturally together. And for example, heavy rain, heavy rain. Why is the rain heavy? Does anyone really know? Do native speakers know why rain is called heavy? Well, not really. It's they don't think about it. They just know these words go naturally together, and this is why they make for a good mark. This is why you can get a good mark when using collocations, because native speakers use them naturally without thinking. And so if you can do this, it sounds very natural, very like a native speaker. And the IELTS speaking descriptors tell the examiner to listen for any use of collocations, because this is usually a sign of someone's vocabulary being round about a 7 at least. So the descriptors actually say the candidate shows an awareness of style and collocation. So don't worry about this. Don't choose hundreds and hundreds you must memorize. All you need is maybe 2 that you can use in any part of the speaking test at some point, because the examiner, unless he's asleep, will notice immediately if you use them and use them correctly. So, from the candidate's answer, where did she use collocations or natural sounding expressions? First example, "I enjoy the peace and quiet of the countryside." So why is peace and quiet good sounding? Well, it's good sounding and is used well and sounds natural. Why? Because a candidate may say the quiet and peace of the countryside, and that would be wrong. That wouldn't be right. Why? Because they don't go together in this order. Again, another example would be, "I like to go home after a hard day's work, relax, have a cup of coffee, and enjoy the peace and quiet." Okay? I don't want to enjoy the quiet and peace. I want to enjoy the peace and quiet. People say this naturally in English. This is the point. Natural sounding vocabulary for the higher mark. Okay, and thirdly, throughout the candidate's answer, the general vocabulary is of a higher standard because it's more formal or slightly academic. And what does that mean exactly when you're speaking? It means that you're more precise with the vocabulary you use, and she does this throughout her answer, and very well. There is no book or there is no rule that tells you which words will get you a 9, for example, in IELTS. There's nothing like that. And the examiner is not listening for this. What they're listening for is that the student has an awareness of words that are better than basic. They can use these words, and these words give a more precise meaning to what they are saying. So here are some of the interesting words that you may have heard during her answer. For example, the word originate, cyclical, significant instead of saying important, profound instead of saying deep, visible, to embody, and this reminds me of. Okay, so she used a lot of examples, a lot of good vocabulary here, and you can listen again and you can hear the words and see the list of words that she said. Okay, so these have been some useful phrases that you can use in many answers in the speaking test when you're doing parts, particularly when you're doing parts 2 and 3. And so what have we learned in the last 2 videos? In the first video, we learned how to extend your answers when you speak, the long turn, if you remember that. And today we learned some good words and phrases that can be used in lots of different answers to impress the examiner and raise the score. Okay, so thank you. I'll see you the next time.